I am starting this new platform to bring fly tying to everybody who is interested in learning how to tie flies. I want this to be extremely interactive. What we're going to do is I'm going to let you guys, as the audience, pick which flies that we tie together. If you want to learn how to tie a specific pattern or, any type of dry fly, nymph, Euro nymph, streamers, you name it. I'm going to eventually bring your ideas to the Vise. So for right now, since I'm already sitting here tying flies in the mornings and most evenings, I'm just going to go live. I was waiting until I got my entire platform set up, which I promise you guys, this is going to get better and better. I'm going to have different camera angles and whatnot, but we got to start somewhere. So I figured I already got the platform set up. I might as well start using it. We're going to start tying some flies together. Right now, I am working on game changers, and I'm going to show you how I systematically put these things together piece by piece. And when I tie, I always try to tie a minimum of 4 flies of the same pattern, because 1, we lose flies on the river, and 2, I just like to have multiple patterns. If a certain pattern is working that day, maybe I can give one to a buddy or somebody else on the boat, and that way we can continue to catch fish. So without further ado, we're going to start tying these sections in. You can see I've already got one body segment put together. I start off with the tail, then I put the first section of material in front of the tail, and then I work my shanks going forward. So overall, including both, I'm putting a rear trailer hook in as well as a front hook, and both of those are included in what I consider my articulations. So it's a 7-piece articulated fly, and this is Blaine Chocolate's pattern, clearly the game changer. So yeah, let's get started. I already have my little assembly line going here. What I do is, because on this particular vise, I do change between 2 jaws. When I'm tying on the hooks, I tie with my large game jaws, and I'll show you how I switch those out. This is a Dyna King, and all you do is you take off this tensioning cone, slip the new jaws in, and put the cone back on. It is morning here, and I am drinking coffee, so if I'm stuttering a little bit, I apologize. So yeah, tail, first section of material, and I start off by doing all my tails first with one set of jaws, with the big game jaws. Then I switch over to my midge jaws, or whatever you want to call them, my smaller jaw, to hold the shanks in place as I work forward on the 5 sections of shanks. Then I will put my main hook in the vise, and I will finish the head of the fly. And after I finish putting all the flies together, then I will do the trimming. So let me show you a finished fly pattern, and I have here the finished trimmed fly. If you don't already know, this is Blaine Chocolate's Game Changer, and I did put a trailer hook in this. I do know that the trailer hook takes away from some of the action because it adds some weight in the back, but you can see these things, they move pretty well. And if you guys are watching live, feel free to ask questions. I'm going to try to answer questions as they come in once this platform gets rolling. But I'm sure most of you are going to be watching this after it's already been streamed. So this is the pattern that we're making. It's crazy how much movement this thing has in the water, how realistic it looks. If you haven't seen them, go and search, watch videos, buy a couple of these flies, take them out to the river or the ponds, and just watch how well they move in the water. So let's get started on building our section. I hang my flies up here as I'm making them. I'll do all my bodies, hang all my bodies up here, and then as I go from left to right, I will pull the oldest fly that I've tied, and I do that because obviously there's glue drying. I know that in the original pattern they use a UV resin. I don't use a UV resin. I just use standard Sally's hard as nails. And I do that just on my thread section. I like to use Loctite for the body of the fly, and I have a fresh shank already in the vise here, so we're going to get started. I'm going to close off this next shank. I stroke back the material. What I want to do is I want to get this thread all the way back as far as I can on this shank, because I don't want huge gaps between my sections of material from here going to the next shank. So I will try to get my thread as far back as I can without binding up the articulated portion from shank to shank. Okay, so then we take our material, and again, this is Hairline's Blaine Chocolates Game Changer, chenille black, the CG11, or I'm sorry, GC11. Told you it's early. And I'm going to strip off just a little bit of material, so you can, hopefully you can see that there's two little pieces of thread sticking out. And I'm going to pinch that, and I'm going to tie it as far back as I can. And once we get this platform going, this is where I'm going to have a nice overhead close-up tight shot camera for all of you to be able to see exactly what's going on. I know that right now I'm just using a cell phone, so. All right, so I tied it all the way back. I advanced my thread forward. Then I'm gonna take my Loctite, and I'm gonna just coat all that thread that I just put down on that shank. So the way I set mine up is I leave it in the bag like this. I don't know if this is how everybody does it, but I leave the material in the bag, and I set up the material in this bag so that the fibers are facing the correct way, because I want to be able to continuously wrap this material over the shank, and I don't want all of these little fibers to get caught in my wraps. So what I do is I leave it in the bag. You're gonna see me struggling in real-time fly tying here. And I start wrapping on the shank, and as I do it, pull it back so that we're not catching any of those fibers. And I'm putting one wrap right in front of the other. And as I do it, I'm untwisting the material so that it just lays perfectly one in front of the other. And then once I have everything all the way up to the eye, I'll bring my thread through the material and wrap it right around the eye of the shank 2 or 3 times. and that super glue is doing its job. It's going to glue everything down to the shank and make this fly durable, because I don't like flies to fall apart, not when, especially when they're working or a fish gets a hold of them. And I would be using a GSP 100 thread. I don't have any in black. I know that's not a big deal. I could take the time to marker up the thread and color it black, but I'm using a thinner thread right now. So I'm trying to be very careful. I'm sure this thread's going to be breaking all over the place. So I'm putting just enough tension on here, and I'm wrapping these threads going backwards, so that way I'm keeping that eye free and clear. And when I do these, when I tie this off, I'm just using half hitches. So putting like a triple or sometimes quadruple, and I'm using just a pen, an empty thing, but I just want that thread, and I always test it. I pull away from the eye like that and make sure that the threads aren't coming undone, just like that. And if they do, I'll redo that little tie-in, that little half hitch. So I want to make sure that they're tight. All right, that one's sticking. Take my Sally's Hard as Nails, and I don't want a lot, so I always knock off as much of the excess glue as I can. I stroke everything back, put a drop on the top, drop on the bottom. I like to see the thread completely get coated. Then I take my tool and I will push down through the eye to make sure that the thread is pushed back, and I'll sometimes push backwards and try to get that thread, clear that eye if there's any that has moved out forward. Then add on my next shank. So that was shank number 1 in front of the hook. Take my next little section, and I am going to use a pair of tweezers. This is just how I've been doing it. I put the tweezers into the shank, put it right on the shank like that, so I can open it up, and I kind of like pry and hold. Sometimes I struggle with this. I also use a small pair of needle nose pliers, but once I kind of get it where I want it, I'll just try to force it down into that eye. And it's just kind of stiff right now because there's glue involved. Once that glue dries, I'll knock that free and clear and make sure that that's got really good movement. And you can see I'm using a rubber band to hold my rear hook. On the traditional Game Changer pattern, there is no rear hook, but I wanted to add a trailer hook on Stinger on all of these. So the rubber band stays right there. Grab my shank, open up my vise, and I just advance it forward, stroke all the fibers out of the way so they don't get caught in the vise, and then next shank is ready to go. So, of course, I'm going a little slower because I'm talking, and I'm trying to help all of you with maybe a few tips or techniques that hopefully you pick up something that from what I'm showing you. And if you guys got tips for me, I'm more than happy to listen. So I want this to be a learning experience. When I was 15 years old, I went and took fly tying lessons. I'm going to be 40 this summer. Can't believe I'm going to be 40. But when I was 15 years old, there was no YouTube. There was nothing but a few fly tying books and a couple of old guys sitting in the back of a fly shop. And I went and I sat in a back of a fly shop with, it was me, a little 15-year-old boy, and like, I don't know, 6 or 7 guys, and they're probably 50s and 60s, and just talking about fly fishing and fly tying. And where I grew up, fly fishing was not a thing. It wasn't popular at all. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, in Youngstown. I went to it was called the Boardman Fly Shop in Boardman, Ohio, not Boardman, Michigan. And yeah, that's where it all started for me. I still have my original book, and if you guys ever want to see the original book that I learned to tie flies from, I will show it to you. Maybe we'll get into talking about some stuff like that. So I just added my next section of material, and it's the same thing going all the way up forward. I'm going to take my little bit of Loctite, and I'm just going to dab it over that thread. Make sure my material is staying as far back on the shank as possible, and I'm going to wrap it going forward. Okay. I'm going to trim my material out of the way. Hopefully my hands aren't too much in the way. Like I said, guys, I was trying to hold off until I had all the pieces of the puzzle here to do some awesome live streaming for everybody, but that cost money. So right now, I am just going to get this project going, and I'm going to do it. I'm already sitting at the Vise every day, so I might as well try to help somebody else out there learn how to tie something. I know there's tons of videos on YouTube and whatnot, but I thought if we can make this interactive, and if you guys have questions in live time, go ahead and put your comments down, and if I can't answer them during the tying session, I will definitely answer them at the end and reply back to you. So just going to half hitch. Once you get going on these things, they're a really simple pattern, clearly, because it's only technically 2 types of material: your tail, whatever material you use for your tail, and then the body material. You can get fancy with it and add some flash or foam or whatever you would want over the back on each section. This is just a straightforward game changer pattern, so I'm not doing any of that today, but I probably will put that on some of my other flies. Okay, it's nice and clear. Okay, looks like that's my 3rd section all done. I'm losing count here. Okay, so we got 3, 4, 5. Let's see here. And on to the next section. These little sections of shanks, they are sharp. on the tips near the eye, and then also where you close it off. So be careful with your thread, so your thread will get cut there, almost guaranteed. And I'm sure it'll happen to me here on camera. At some point. All right. Get those little threads exposed. Tie it in. Try to get as far back as you can. Oh, there it is. And like I said, I'm using some really thin thread here. So I'm just trying to use up what I have. I got a lot of spools of thread sitting around that aren't getting used on the regular, so I know it's not the right kind of thread to be using, but I'm coating it with super glue, so it doesn't really matter. It's more of a finesse thing because it's a weaker thread. Like I said, I'd prefer to be using a gel spun thread of some size, 50 or 100. I used 100 the most on most of my streamers. On the white ones that I tied, I used all GSP 100. It was actually Vise thread though. So this whole streaming thing is really new to me, so I'm going to be learning a lot about it. Hopefully it's going to keep progressing. I know Twitch really wasn't a platform that was designed for just anybody to be streaming. I know it was mostly for gaming, but I'm going to start utilizing it as well. So maybe I can reach some of you guys a little bit further away from the good old US of A. I know a lot of people over in the UK, Europe, they really love fly fishing and fly tying, and I get a lot of comments from people overseas. They like to do a lot of pike fishing over there, which I learned how to fly fish in Ireland. So when I was 15 years old, before I went and took my fly tying lessons, I went over as an exchange student sort of program. It was called the Ulster Project, and stayed with a family over there after their son came and stayed with me here in the United States. It was a church program, and I wanted to learn how to fly fish, and I knew that fly fishing was, really big over there. I mean, a lot of the original fly tying and fly fishing came from England and Scotland and Ireland and all those areas. And so that was one of my goals when I went there, was to learn how to fly fish. Unfortunately, the family I stayed with, they were not fishermen, none of them. They knew somebody who did some fly fishing, so they linked me up with them, and I got to go out on some of the small streams and caught my very first brown trout on a dry fly. Remember it like it was yesterday. It was a size 16 blue wing olive, and and I had no idea what kind of fly it was then, but I do now. But that was my first experience, and I taught myself how to cast a fly rod in the cul-de-sac where the family lived. And I was out there practicing in the mornings, casting my fly rod on cement, casting my line across the cement. I had no idea what I was doing, but I taught myself how to cast a rod, and when I got back from that summer, I begged my mom to take me to get fly tying lessons. I found a fly shop. I looked up in the yellow pages and found out there was a fly shop not too far away from where I lived, about 30 minutes. And my mom drove me there every week to take these fly tying lessons. And the first fly that I ever learned how to tie was a woolly worm. If you don't know what a woolly worm is, look it up, because it's not anything special. It's a couple pieces of material, and it just teaches you the basics. I mean, every fly is basically the same. You start from the tail or the back of the fly and you work your way forward. And it's just all systematic. Once you've learned how to tie and you understand the order of which you add the materials, you can look at any photo, any picture of any fly, and you can tie that fly. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to watch the step-by-step tutorials once you get a good handle on it, and we'll go through some of those types of patterns so that way you can learn and see where you would add what type of material, whether there's weight added into the shank, or whether there's a two-tone body and it's deer hair on the top and it's just basic dubbing on the bottom, or whatever. We'll go through all that stuff. Whatever you guys want to see me tie, we will tie together. I'm going to try to do this almost every time that I sit down at the Vise, and eventually we're going to get a schedule going together, whatever works best for everybody, whether it's every Friday night or every other Friday night or every Monday evening or Monday morning. I know evenings are going to be better for most people, so I will try to get some evening sessions in, but that's generally when I'm at work. So most evenings are going to be tough for me, but you can always do it later in the evening, depending on how late you all want to stay up. Okay, got my next section. Keep that material pinned back so I can get as tight to those jaws as I possibly can for the first wrap. That sets everything up. Find my center of my material and twist it forward. See, there we go. Okay. See here. Trying to see. I'm still learning this stuff, so I'm looking at to see if there's any chats going. Okay. I didn't think there would be at 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. everybody with day-to-day work schedules is at the office or school or work or somewhere. I'm sitting here tying flies. Okay. And let's clean this up. Sometimes I like the traditional whip finish. Trying to keep all the material out of the way. There you go. There's a whip finish without a whip finish tool. Okay, it's nice and tight. And I will brush these sections out usually as I'm going, especially if I notice if any material is getting caught. And then I'll give them a good brush at the end. So I got 2 little brush tools. I got this one here, and it's a stone foe. I don't know how to say it right. So we got a little brush there. It's got a piece of Velcro on this side. I'll use that one. I made my own. I've been using for years. It's just Velcro glued onto a popsicle stick, and on this side, I just took a little bit of the magnetic tape that comes with some of your smaller hooks, and I glued that to the end of that popsicle stick. So I made myself a little tool there. So if you guys don't have one of these, make yourself one. It's pretty simple. Just glue a little bit of take a little super glue, little Velcro on one side, a little bit of the magnetic tape there. It helps you pick up them smaller hooks, beads, all kinds of stuff. So I made that one, and then mustache comb. So use that. I use that one too. This one has bigger teeth, so I'll run that through my material first. If there's any material caught up, and then I'll take the smaller teeth and I'll run that through. But you can see that there's not much that's caught in that body. So pull it out of my vise here, pop it off the rubber band, and hang it up. Let it dry, and it's sitting there drying. Sitting there drying while I work on the next one. And I'll take my next tail. I already got my tail set up with a shank in there. See, it's glues tight. I'll just work it until it gets completely free. There we go. And then I'll stick it in my vise. Take my rubber band, put it back on the back hook. And I've been using up some shanks also that have been sitting around, ones that have a little bit bigger back articulation. They're just kind of awkward sometimes to tie on. So I do make shanks as well, but I'm just trying to use up material that I got laying around, so otherwise I'll keep making shanks or use shanks that I prefer over using up material that I already have. It's got to get used at some point, so all right. I didn't know I was going to start this today. I was going to start this live streaming stuff, but I figured what the heck. If I just keep waiting to have all the proper equipment and material to do it the way I want to, it'll probably never get started. So start it now, and I'll keep building on this each tying session that I do. I'd like you to see like the flies. I'm going to have the flies hanging up behind me here. Right now you see my backside of my room. I got a walleye that my uncle actually caught that walleye, and I ended up with it. He passed away, so when he passed away, I wanted to get it up on the wall. So he caught that walleye. I got a walleye actually bigger than that when I was 8 years old. So out of Lake Erie, mine was 28 inches. I think that one's like maybe 27 and a half or something, but mine was 28 and a half, and it was 10 pounds. First walleye I ever caught when I was 8 years old out of Lake Erie. Like I said, I grew up Northeast Ohio, so did a lot of lake fishing growing up. And probably over my shoulder you can see a rainbow on the wall right here. And my wife actually caught that. It was her first rainbow trout she ever caught, and it was at a drawed. It was at a we got in a drawing to be able to fish a private section of water, and she was able to she caught more than one, but that was the best one she caught. So I wanted to mount that up for her, and it was a catch and keep program. It wasn't a catch and release. Most of what I do fishing is all catch and release when it comes to trout, especially because we don't have a whole lot of trout water here in Ohio. We have very little that holds trout year round, and for sustainability, we try to keep the fish in the water here. And it goes for when I go elsewhere as well. And I go to Michigan, it's all catch and release. Just got back from the White River in Arkansas, and that was all catch and release. We caught some nice brown trout and a tiger trout. That was pretty cool. If you guys, if you don't follow my Instagram, check out my Instagram page. It's TLE Media, so at TLE Media. And it's TLE Media because I like to film and make videos. So clearly, if you're seeing this on YouTube, you already know that. So, and that's Tight Lines Entertainment. So, Tight Lines Entertainment on YouTube and at TLE Media on Instagram. We have a Facebook as well, so Tight Lines Entertainment on Facebook. And right now, we're streaming to all of those platforms, as well as Twitch, which I don't know a whole lot about yet, but it's set up. So this will be on TikTok as well, but you're not allowed to live stream on TikTok until you have 1,000 followers. So it's going to be quite a while before I start streaming live on there, but I'll post it up. And also share this with a friend, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing giveaways, and I'm not going to wait until I have 1,000 followers. I'm not going to wait until I have hundreds of people watching. When we get to that point, it'll make it even more interesting, because I'll do some pretty awesome giveaways. I just want to do this to kind of help everybody learn how to tie flies, maybe pick up some tips, just to try to build a community around doing this live. So yeah. Once I get to the point where I have 20 people watching or more, I want to keep it interesting. I'm going to give out a fly each live feed. So each time we stream and we do some fly tying, I'm going to give away one of the flies that we are tying, and I will ship that to you. We'll figure out how we'll choose who gets the fly for each session. I know there's some I know there's some tools on the platform that I'm using that might help me with some of that. So once I get that figured out, we'll be giving away some flies, and I will ship it to you on my dollar. Especially if we're having fun doing this together and being interactive with it. And I know everybody out there's got things to do, so sitting there and watching for hours, maybe some of you will, maybe most of you won't, but just come back and, you know, watch it, watch the rest of it later on, because it should be published, especially on YouTube. It'll be published and it'll be there forever, so you'll be able to watch maybe the finishing of the flies, because I'm doing this in a production type of way. So I know you're seeing me do the same steps going forward, but we can also talk about anything else if you have questions. So, like I said, I want to do this to help everybody out there. All right. Yeah, even though there's not that many people tuning in right now, it's keeping me more interested. Normally I'm getting up and walking around in between, and it does get monotonous, so need to get up and stretch legs, and broke my thread again. That's what I get for trying to use up this super light thread. It's funny how long fly tying materials sometimes will last or stick around. When I was 15 and I took those fly tying lessons in northeast Ohio, I still have the original saddle cape, grizzly hackle, and it's half grizzly, and it was Metz, I think, made it. Let me see if I have it here. Yeah, just to kind of show you guys, talk fly tying in between this stuff. This was the very first cape that I ever purchased, and you can see that just like most people when they get into tying flies, the section that I've used the most is right in here. And because I was tying a lot of dry flies, everybody wanted to catch trout and fish on dry flies, and so that's what I used the most of. And there was a price tag that was on this cape. It was a double section cape. Still got some great little hackles on here for some size 18s and size 20s that I haven't used up. And since then I have purchased more, and you can see this one here, how much it cost. Okay, $44.95 for that one grizzly hackle. This two-piece, I think, was $12.95, if I'm not mistaken. The price tag is completely gone at this point, but there was a price tag that was on here. I think it was so crusty it just fell off, but I want to say it was between $12 and $15 for this entire section of feathers, which was, I thought, pretty crazy at that time. But that was when I was 15, so... Oh, bag doesn't even close up anymore. It's got holes on the bottom and the top. But I tie off of it sometimes. I just kind of keep it around because I think it's cool. I still got the first cape that I ever bought when I was 15 years old from the original fly shop that doesn't exist anymore. Okay. All right, back at it. Little Loctite. Get my orientation of my material to start properly. Pull it all the way back up against the jaws. Start wrapping her forward. We could even talk setup as far as how we manage our material and where we put our hooks and how we set up to tie high volumes of flies. You know, little things like I got this piece of foam here, and this is where I put all of my hooks that are getting ready to be used. So for these game changers, I'm going to be using all of these hooks here. And these are 3/0 hooks and short shank 3/0. Okay, brand's not crazy important. If you want to know details on that kind of stuff, I'll get it for you. I know most people tie this fly and they use the Kona Big Game. I think it's called Kona Big Game hook. I try to do things a little cheaper sometimes. Not cheap as in junk material, cheaper as in substitute different hooks that work just as well. So we can talk about that kind of stuff also. I do like the way those Kona hooks perform, the way they look. They're really high quality. That's not what I'm using today, but we will sometimes, especially when they're gonna stay in our own personal private boxes and they're not going to friends or it's getting harder to give away flies, but I'm gonna do it. I'm still gonna give them away. I'm gonna give them away to you guys for following along, and I always give flies to my friends. I think it's nice to give somebody something that you handmade, and they go and maybe catch the biggest fish of their life on something that you tied, and it almost makes you feel like you were a part of that in some way. It's my favorite part of fly tying. I just added that. Put the wrong shank in there. I'm using mostly 10mm shanks if you're interested in knowing that fact. But as I go forward, I will slowly increase the size of my shank. There's a lot of recipes out there. I know that there's the standard recipe, and they use a lot of the 10mm shanks. As long as it swims good, that's all I care about. Anything with 7 articulations is going to swim, so. But in theory, the way you want to do it is you want to always you're building a profile. So if your back of your fly is the smallest, thinnest profile, use the shortest shank. And as you progress forward, your shanks get a little bit longer all the way up to the hook. And that's the way things work for the most part on all flies. You're building a profile or a taper, unless it's a caddis, where the body of a caddis is literally an oval or a cigar shape, but most things have a taper to them. Goes from smallest to largest, and that's just a good rule of thumb when you're building something, to try to keep those proportions proper. Again, I'm just trying to get that material to sit as far back on that section of that shank as possible, so when my first wrap goes on, I can add multiple wraps moving forward to fill up that shank, because that's going to keep your fly from having gaps in it. And the more natural the pattern looks, I guess what I'm trying to say is the pattern will look more natural if there's not any gaps between your sections. Let me know if I'm doing pretty good with this. This is the first time I've ever done anything live like this, talking to the camera. If you think it's easy, try it, as it's not. It's not easy to sit here and basically talk to yourself. I need to get sharper scissors. I had all my scissors sharpened last year. I need to get it done again. Too expensive to go and buy a bunch of scissors all the time. I'm using, these are, I think, Dr. Slick. Just an old pair of scissors here. And then when I do my trimming and or when I need a little bit more length, I'm using Pat Cohen's Superfly scissors, and they got a little bit of a serrated edge on them. I really like his curved scissors. Shout out to Pat Cohen there on getting those scissors in production. I know he was told that it wasn't possible by a company or two, but he got it done with I think it was because of the double serration on the blade. But tell you what, man, that's one pair of scissors I have not had to get sharpened or anything. They stay pretty sharp. They always cut for me. So awesome product if you don't have a pair of those. And I'm not getting paid to say that, so clearly I don't have a platform that's booming yet. I'm just giving you some advice, whether it's a free tool that you can hand make or whether it's a good quality tool, because I've been through a lot of it. I'll buy something and I'll either love it or it ends up sitting to the side. So we got what? 1, 2, 3. We're on section 4. Section 4 of 5 shanks. I got 5 shanks between 2 hooks. That's how I end up with 7 sections. Something that you probably could do if you like my rubber band trick, but you don't want a back hook, is you can put a little loop maybe in when you tie in your tail of maybe a little tiny piece of like 6 or 8 pound mono or something, and then you can loop the rubber band through that piece of mono and then attach it somewhere on your vise, so that way it holds this out of your way like this. So that's a little trick that you can use, and then when you get done tying your fly, you just go and you snip out the mono, so as if it was never there. And it's a little extra step, but it's nice when this stuff isn't flopping around everywhere and it's getting in your way of tying. And then another thing that I do, I do all of my trimming at the end instead of per section, but I'll trim the back section when I tie it. And that's especially if I have a rear trailer hook right there, because it's just easier doing it when that is the only section on your vise, and it gives you an aiming point to cut back to, so that way you can build that wedge shape or triangle shape or tapered shape going back to the tail from the head. And when we go to get to the trimming section, you'll see what I'm talking about. You probably can see right there. Lower this a little bit. Probably can see right there that the tail section's already smaller than the rest of this material. That's why, because I trim the tail when I actually make the tail. Knew that was going to happen. It's all right though. I feel good about using up this thread that I don't know if I'd ever get to using it. Maybe when I tie up some nymphs and stuff. Been fishing a lot of Euro patterns past few years and really like that. So when I do tie nymphs, that's pretty much what I've been tying, is Euro patterns, because I tie mostly just for myself. If you're just picking this up live right now and you haven't watched the beginning of this video, I have talked about I'm going to be giving away some flies to some of you out there. So I'm not going to wait until I have this crazy huge audience to do it either. I'm going to do it once I get a handful of people, 15, 20 people viewing. If you leave comments, I will consider sending some flies to those people. If you have legit questions that you want answered, maybe you've been tying and you're coming across the same problem all the time, and if I have some advice that is helpful, I'd be happy to give that to you. And those are the people that I want to help get better at tying, so that way they can get out there and catch more fish. I also have some tools tying tools and some things that are just shelved that I don't use that often. Not that they're not great or they're not good tools. I have my favorites, so I always tend to reach and grab the tools that I like to use the most. Maybe I'll give some of those tools away. I don't know. I've given vices away. I've given some of my older vices to friends and family and people that are just getting into tying. Neighbors. I've taught my neighbors how to tie flies and how to fly fish when they were growing up. Gave away stuff to them. So it's if it's not getting used by me, might as well get used by somebody. So anybody out there who's trying to learn how to tie flies and wants to get better, and if I have something that can help you, I will. Them gold scissors getting a little dull. So I'm gonna reach in here with Cohen's scissors and try to find my core of that material. Just like when you're packing deer hair, I like pushing the material back a little bit, especially once I know that I've already caught the core of the material, so that way I can try to keep that hook eye free and clear as much as possible. The more those sections are just metal to metal, the more movement you're going to get in the water, clearly. So try to keep as much of the material away from the eye as you possibly can. I think there's a time in every fly tier's career, if you want to call it that, when you go from just making flies to building something that has a purpose, whether it's movement or realism. You start thinking about how you're building those patterns differently, and it just kind of clicks, because you're not just thinking about what it looks like, you're thinking about how it functions, how the fly is going to perform underwater, or how it's going to sit on the surface, how it floats. Does it float freely and move in the current, or how does it present itself to the fish if it's a nymph fly on the bottom? Is that fly head down, or is it tail up, head down? Is the hook point facing down? Is the hook point facing up? Knowing how rivers work is a big part of fly design. And once you learn more about how those rivers are affecting what your fly does and how it looks, well, in retrospect, don't get on me about my English from Youngstown. We will start thinking about how that fish is seeing that fly and what's going to trigger that fish to eat the fly. And all of those little things I just mentioned matter. The angle the fly is presented to the fish, whether it's facing down, how does it look when it's floating in the current? When it comes to a nymph pattern, nymphs, the ones that aren't good swimmers, they float freely. They move around, they go upside down, they do this. And if you have a fly that's just stagnant tied sometimes to a piece of mono, that fly it doesn't look as natural because it just moves straight. So think about that. Using a loop for where you tie your fly onto your line, sometimes that makes a big difference. So try that next time. Use a loop knot instead of just tying directly to the eye of the hook, because that's going to allow that fly to turn upside down and move with however the current is going to affect it on the bottom. Sometimes we do that, and it does produce more fish at certain points. So give it a shot. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with some tips and stuff and pack as much information in these sessions as I possibly can. I know it's not just fly tying, so whatever helps you guys catch more fish and learn something different. I guess that's what I'm going for here. Gives me something extra to do when I'm tying. Already I can tell it's not as boring for me. Not that it's boring, but it you do the same thing over and over again. Sometimes it gets to you. 3, 4. So one more section for this guy. And see, that rubber band just holds everything in place, so that way I could just move right back to the next shank. I know we lose a little material when we need to find those threads to tie in, but I think the way that I'm doing this with keeping the material in the package and not just cutting sections, I'm wasting a lot less material in it, as if I was cutting a little piece and then wrapping it, because you always got to peel it back to find those threads. So if you cut a chunk like that and you wrap it and then you have to cut it and you have half of that left, well, now you got to peel a little bit more of that material off, and now you have that on both ends versus just one side. Maybe that makes sense, maybe it doesn't, but that's the way I think about it, because it always seems like I have a little piece that I'm either going to throw away, or it's just too short to try to start it on another shank, and I don't like that. So this way I'm using what I need when I need it, and it's all staying together. I don't like the way this is laying. It's kind of laying backwards on me. Might be twisted up a little bit too much. Well, we'll see how it ends up. If it ends up being weird, I'll just trim it off. It might not be noticeable once the whole fly gets put together. See my buddy Cornell out there, one of my salmon fishing buddies. Sometimes when I think the thread might get in my way, stick my tool right there in the eye and then add my glue around it. And then just give it a little twist to keep it clean. That material kind of laid kind of weird to start, but you're not going to be able to tell once I get another section in front of it. It looks to be kind of straighten itself out. Okay, moving on to the next one. Straight fishing. What's up, buddy? Just checking out who's viewing here. Cool. We are just working on building game changer flies. If you're just now joining us. A little sip of coffee. It's getting cold, so more like a couple gulps of coffee. All right. So I'm going to be doing, these ones are going to be all black. And then I have, if you've seen the black tails with the white sections, those I'm going to paint. So we're going to use a waterproof marker, basically. We like to use these right here, these Copic markers. I have an entire set of an off-brand of the exact same style of marker. Let me see what the brand is, if it says here. Yeah, it's just an art marker, alcohol ink, memo office. So I found an entire kit on Amazon of these markers, and they have all the colors. So I just went ahead and picked up one of those kits, and I've been using them. The color stays on in the water just fine, and I'm going to be making the black with the white. It's going to be an all high gloss purple fly with a black stripe across the back. So once we get to building those bodies, get them all trimmed up, then we'll get on to the coloring of those flies. But these ones here are just going to be all black. I haven't decided if I'm going to use, I might use like red eyes on these ones. I might use some like nickel colored eyes. And I know there's a lot of people out there, they're just kind of using super glue on their eyes. And, excuse me. I don't like using super glue. I started off doing that, a long time ago, and it doesn't finish the fly and give it a nice presentation. I know it doesn't matter probably to the fish, but I have noticed that the super glue eyes, they just come off far too easy. So I know it's the cheap route to go, but what I have done, I've started using the liquid fusion for my eyes, and I will put a drop of that on the back of the eye, stick it to my fly. I go back up into my order, I let it dry. I know it takes a little bit longer. Let it dry fully, and then I will go back over top of it with a second coat. And especially on the heads of these flies, you're putting a little bit of resin around the eye of the hook and up onto the head, and you'll see how we do that when we get to the head. And that helps to push water. Again, talking about, function of a fly versus just the look of a fly. So I think Blaine Chocolate and all those guys out there, they're using something more like the Solaris Flex, and I do like it. On my lighter colored flies like the white, I've noticed a little bit of color discoloration, and so what I ended up doing is just switching fully to the fusion, the liquid fusion, and I know it takes a little bit longer to dry, but I think it just gives it a little bit better finish. Added my glue there before adding my material, but gotta get this on there quick. This first section for me is always the hardest because it's my smallest, and then I got that hook in the way, but I just try to make it work and get it on there as quick as possible. Looks like I'm getting like 3.5 wraps, sometimes 4 on that back section. Get this out of the way so I can get a nice clean tie off. This is one of those shanks that I'm trying to use up. It's got a huge eye. I bought some cheap shanks off of Amazon just to check them out. I try to buy from good name fly distributors or fly tying distributors, and like I use J Stalker to think. I use them quite often for a lot of my stuff. I think that's where I actually got all the material for these flies. And just like you guys out there, I'm paying retail because I'm paying retail on materials right now. I don't have accounts or anything like that, so like I said, I'm just getting started here, trying to get out there and share the passion. I'm going to push some of this thread back. It's sticking out there pretty far. And like I said, I'm using just hard as nails because I'm giving it time to dry in between. I know a lot of the guys out there, they're just using a UV resin, I try to save my UV resin for where I feel I need it the most. Stuff gets expensive. Okay, moving on. This thread is ridiculous. I should be tying midges with this thing. But you throw 50 wraps on top of the shank and some super glue, it's not coming undone. Especially for trout. We're mostly fishing these for trout. I might take them out and fish some hybrids here coming up in a week or two for some wipers. That's a cross between a white bass and a striper, if you don't know. They fight and they tug. Tug is the drug. My wife really likes going and catching those on the fly rod. We do it from a boat, so you don't have to make long casts, or I mean, when the temperatures of the water get right, those things are just, they're crazy. And they eat everything, especially white. Anything white, anything shadish. Gotta do a little untwisting here, getting a lot of twist in my material. And I'm just untwisting the entire package, if you're wondering what I'm doing. If you can't see it, I can't tell if it's below the camera line or not. So I always twist my material up, so that way the core of the material is hitting the super glue, hitting the shank first, and that's gonna throw my material straight out away from the shank. Oh, got my thread there. So it helps lay that material on there nicely without getting a whole bunch of those fibers caught up in the center of the fly. I've been wanting to do this for a long time at TLE and try to get together with a bunch of you guys out there so we can discuss fly tying and maybe teach each other some stuff. And again, I will say, once I start building a little bit of an audience, it doesn't have to be big, and you guys are following along, I'm going to give away a fly that we're tying and ship it to you. No charge, no strings attached, just because. This section's not looking too clean here. Let's see if I can fix it up by cleaning out that eye after I tie it off. It's looking kind of Maybe I need a break. Let's redo it here. I do like my vise. I've gotten I've gotten used to it, but there's a lot better ones out there. I know it. And that's exactly why right there. I was just getting ready to say, occasionally I get a section that pops out, and I can't crank down on the shank any harder than I already am. So this is a Dynaking. A friend of mine told me, get a peak. I didn't listen. I got a Dynaking. And I just broke my thread. I just had to get a new forcing cone shipped out to me, because the other one, I mean, it was sticking so hard that I had to get a pair of pliers and vice grips to put a fly in the vise and take it out, or put a shank in the vise, take it out, put a hook in the vise, take it out. And it was really getting to me. So I called them up, and they said, yeah, we can help you out. Go on our website and buy new parts. And I was like, okay. So they basically, know they have a product that will wear out, and I expect the jaws to wear out over time, especially if you do a lot of tying, but not functional parts of the vise itself. Like, and I haven't heard anybody say anything about Peak doing that, and they're less expensive. So let me know your experiences on certain vices. Which one you think's the best. I was looking at the one, I think it's FNF, I think it's called. Sven Diesel was telling me about it, and he was that's what I think he's tying on right now, and told me, like, I know they're a lot more money, and they're currently on back order, so I'm actually on a list right now to see if I can get one of the next vices that come out in production, so I can maybe buy one of those. But they're $900, so like, that's a big if right now. Trying to save money, as well as I'm sure most of you out there are. Got to save that money so we can use it in gas to get to the river and go fishing. All right, let's see if I can clean this eye back up. It's looking pretty much filled, but I got it cleared out there. Got plenty of space to get a shank in there and keep it free and moving. $11 o'clock. These things are funny when they're like little puff balls of material. Until you get them all trimmed up, they look funny. I forget who it was. I just showed one of these flies to. I think it might have been my mom, actually. We were FaceTiming, and I was showing her what I'd been working on. And she was like, oh, it's so cute. It's like a little bear. It's like a little teddy bear. I don't know. She said something like that. It's pretty funny. Like, they do look like a little toy, like a cat toy or something. And if you have a cat, I bet you you put one on a string. Make sure there's no hooks on it, but maybe snip the hooks off. I bet it would make one heck of a cat toy. It's funny. We're trying to make trout toys, trout candy. I wish I had better excuses for my thoughts, but I don't drink and I don't do drugs, so no excuse. This is just me. I am really looking forward to having discussions about these tying sessions and answering any of your questions you guys might have. And then, like I said, eventually getting to the point where you're telling me what to tie. I will tie whatever you want to see me tie, step by step, so that way if there's a certain pattern that you want to learn how to tie, or if you guys want to just make something up together, I do that sometimes too. I try not to post names and stuff on flies anymore, because almost everything out there has already been done, and you start naming flies and people start getting upset for some reason. But yeah, I just tie flies. Sometimes I don't even use the right terminology when I'm tying. I don't use the right vocab, but who cares? Just tie. No questions are dumb either. Like I said, I started doing this when I was 15, and if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer. But if I know something, or I can help you get better, I will try to do that. And I hope the audio is coming through clear for everybody. Like I said, I do have professional videography and filming equipment. I'm gonna be utilizing that stuff when I do these live streams. I just don't have anything set up yet. I'm just going for it. I just want to get out there and start doing these live stream sessions to tie for all of you guys. Like I said, I'm already sitting here tying, so I might as well just flip the camera on and film these sessions, because maybe it's gonna help some of you guys out there. But once I get going, boating 4 fish, I didn't land any personally. Actually, about 5 minutes into the float, I broke my favorite streamer rod, so it's at the shop getting fixed. I had to send it in. It's a high quality rod, so they still make you pay. They call it a shipping fee, but it's worth it when you have your favorite rod and it breaks. It was negligence. It was totally my fault. I got stuck in a tree, and we tried to row backwards a little bit to go get it, and I reached for the line. When I grabbed the line, the boat moved a little bit downstream, and I didn't let go, and I ended up grabbing onto the tip and just broke the tip. I fished with the rod the rest of the day. It actually fished just fine. I don't know if that had anything to do with me not catching anything or not, but it did make it a lot more work for my arm to cast. But I'll have that rod hopefully back in another week or two. Who knows with everything, the way things are going though. I know shipping and everything else has been slow. So, boy, that didn't tie very well. I think we're just going to end up calling this part 1 of tying this particular pattern, and the next part will be finishing the fly and putting the head on and doing the trimming. So let's see here. This is my first time doing a live stream for this, so bear with me. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me give me some feedback. Help me out here. Trying to help me help you, so that way I can make some cool videos for you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got one more. Keep forgetting where I'm at. Okay. Boy, looks like I got 2 more after this one. 2 more bodies to put together. Could probably hear it in my voice that I need a break, but actually getting a little low on this spool finally. I'm sure I'm going to end up going through this entire thing of black thread, and probably then some, just on these bodies alone. Get my material oriented backwards the way I want it. That first wrap in there. It's wanting to push forward, so I got to keep pulling it back. Once you get going, this is a really simple fly to tie. Getting good at the trimming might take you a little practice, but hopefully I can help you kind of cut some learning curve time off of it once I get to that point. I still mess up flies on occasion. I still make the wrong cut. You can't put material back on. It's just like wood carving or anything like that. Like, once you cut, that's it. So the flies still fish, they just don't look as pretty. But I try to pride myself on taking my time and building the best looking fly and the most durable fly that I can. My friends who I give these flies to, they appreciate it too. Okay. Glue up those threads. And if I go a little heavy on the glue, I ain't too worried about it as long as I don't get a bunch on my material. And then I will clean it up when I go to add it to the body or to the next section, depending on where it's at. So there's four little bodies that I got tied up. Looks like it only took me almost an hour and a half, including talk time in between and whatever. Okay. And like I said, you guys, if you end up catching this on the live feed, throw me some questions if you have any questions. You know, like what kind of hooks am I using? Where am I getting my shanks? Did I build these shanks? You know, which I didn't. I do build shanks, but I just ended up having some laying around that I'm using up. Like I already said, if you've been watching or if you've watched up to this point. I want to inspire you guys to get up and get out there and catch fish on flies that you tie. I feel there's no better feeling than catching a fish on something you handmade. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to take a break after I get this little section done. And when I come back to the vise, we'll pick back up. I'll finish these last two bodies, and then we will go right into finishing the heads of the flies if I have enough time before I gotta head out the door here. Hopefully I didn't do too bad of a job on my first streaming session. I will probably try to do most of these sessions around the 9 a.m. Time frame. I think I might try to do Friday evenings just because a lot of people are going fishing on Saturdays and they're going to tie a few flies, and maybe we can tie some flies together before we all get out and fish on a weekend. So I think that might be one of the evenings that I aim to tie. Maybe a Wednesday evening as well. So maybe we'll do a midweek and we'll do the end of the week before the weekend. And let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on schedule. Let me know if there's a fly that you want to see tied. Let me know if you think I suck. Let me know. Just let me know. Let me know what we should tie, what we should whip up together on the vise, or If there's a certain species of fish you want to chase and you want to see a fly tied for that type of fishing scenario, we can do that too. I'm gonna ultimately be tying flies that you guys want to see. Anybody out there who's watching, if you want to see a particular fly tied, or you have an idea for a fly, we'll put it together. We'll try to whip it up on the vise. I got one here in my back pocket that I'm wanting to put together that I drew up on paper, and we're gonna probably put that fly together after I get through these game changers. So once I get through tying up these game changers, I think I'm gonna do like 4 or 5 color varieties. We're gonna do some painted up ones with alcohol markers. I'm gonna do rainbows and brown trout, and I'm gonna do a shad. Right, I just got done working through all my white, doing black. Then I'm gonna do purple. Yeah, so if you guys want to see, some different bugs tied up, dry flies, nymphs, whatever. I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm doing that because I know people are gonna tune in and out. Okay, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna take a break right there, and I'm gonna get up and have some early lunch and get ready to get back at it. So, yeah. So I'm gonna try to sign back on for a little bit longer before I have to get ready to go to work. I got some chores and stuff around the house here I need to get done before I leave. So I may or may not be back before this evening. But once I get back to the Vise, I'm just going to get right back on streaming the rest of this tying session. So let me know your thoughts. I'm going to try to do this every time I sit down at the Vise. Keeps it interesting. Gets some information out there about tying flies, tools, fishing in general. Anything you guys want to talk about, I'm game. So we'll try to keep this thing going. Thanks a lot.